Our mission is to make science accessible, engaging, and inspiring by connecting learners with experts and encouraging curiosity about the universe and our place within it. Today, we will continue our journey with Lecture 2, Evolution of the Earth, General Geology, and Geophysiology. It is my pleasure to once again welcome our esteemed guest speaker, Ms. Bharti Sharma, a geologist, researcher, and founder of ADYA, Planetary and Geoscience Research. We are delighted to have you with us again, ma'am. After today's lecture, we will continue with this exciting journey with lecture 3, which is about life on Earth and evolution of life, and lecture 4, human evolution and the future of the space exploration. So, without any further delay, I invite Ms. Bharti Sharma to begin today's session. Ma'am, the virtual stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for such a warm welcome. And I appreciate Quantum Veda to provide a platform for me to provide or to share my knowledge on Earth and space science with all of you. Thank you so much, participants, for coming once again to the lecture series. Today, we'll be dealing on the origin and evolution of Earth. Okay, so I'm sharing my slide. Whatever questions you guys have, please share it in the inbox, and at the end of the presentation I'll open the stage for all the questions, but whatever the questions are in the chat box, I'll try my best to provide answers to them while I'm giving the lecture. Okay.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Okay, so a very warm welcome to all of you, and I'm happy to be your educator once again. So today we are going to talk about the history of Earth. But before we talk about, I'll try my best to recall what we have studied so far in the previous sessions. So we all know that the Earth we are talking about includes, what we are going to talk about today is also about our solar system as well, how solar system got formed. And some of you have asked the question how we have different minerals in different planets, or how the differentiation has occurred in Earth or on Venus or on Mars. So we'll try to solve all these questions. There are some topics which need much more detailed explanation, like the physics of the solar system. So for that, I would appreciate if I can give you some prompt. And as today's lecture is going to be very detailed, so if you I'll just give the prompts to you. Try to understand those questions all by yourself. If nothing happens, then I'll try to solve those questions in the next lecture, because next lecture is very small. It is only dealing with the moon and the planetary missions related to moon. So whatever questions related to gravitational force, centrifugal force, or to deep physics of solar system, I'll try to solve those questions in the next in the next lecture. But today I'll just touch them on the surface. Okay. So we know that universe began 13.8 billion years ago in an event called Big Bang. Okay. After the Big Bang, the universe was extremely hot. And as we know, the universe started racing towards the end, or it started expanding, then the cooling started. Okay. So as it expanded, it cooled. Now, why did it cool? Because the same energy was spreading through a larger and larger amount of space. So the energy became less concentrated. Now, when energy becomes less concentrated, temperature decreases. So as the universe cooled, something important became possible. What was that? Matter could begin to form. Okay. The first atoms appeared. Now, most of them were hydrogen. We have talked about the periodic table in the last lecture, that how different atoms are forming. So from hydrogen, what next form? Helium, and then next lithium. So that's basically Earth. Basically, that's how all these elements started to form, and then that were the ground materials for Earth to form, or to rocks to form, or the gas giants to form. Okay. So now the question arises, if the universe only had hydrogen and helium, where did the all other elements came from? Where did iron came from? Where did silicon came from? Where did oxygen came from? Now we know that all these materials are forming in a periodic table format, but where exactly they form? So the answer is stars. Okay, last in the last lecture we have talked about star dust. So how does star form? So stars form from basically two elements, that is hydrogen and helium. Hydrogen and helium gas begin gathering together because of gravity. So more one atom, and then the other atom uh, start merging together. Okay, so gravity becomes more stronger because gravity force that pulls matter towards other matter. So the more matter gathers into one place, the stronger that pull becomes. So over millions of years, huge clouds of gas became denser and denser. Now the center of those clouds became hotter and hotter. So eventually, that a process became nuclear fusion. So we have studied about fission and fusion nuclear reactions in our sixth or seventh class science textbook, right? So when fusion begins, a star is born. Okay, now two more hydrogen fused together becomes uh, a giant star, and that's how fusion forms, and that's how hydrogen bombs are formed. Okay. Now the first stars in the universe had finally appeared. If you can see here, after glow pattern and recombination after dark ages, we have our first stars. Okay. In the evolution of galaxies diagram, you can see there are first stars. So after dark ages, when there was nothing, only dust clouds, then we have our first stars because of the fusion of hydrogen atoms. Okay. Now they produced heavier elements. Sorry, after the first stage to hydrogen into helium, then they started producing into heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, magnesium, silicon, and iron. All these were taking place into the stars itself. Okay.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you know that the slides are not visible.
Slides are not visible.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wait. In the slide, you can see the slide changing, right?
Yes, yes, we can see.
Okay. Now, please confirm you are able to see this chapter one, the cosmic story slide, right? The evolution of
Uh,
galaxies diagram is
yeah.
on the page. Okay.
Yeah, we can see, ma'am. You can please proceed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So now we know all these elements make up the Earth today were created in the stars. That was in the first stars. Now we have another question. If the elements were inside the stars, how did they get out? Okay. So when large stars reached the end of their life, some of them exploded. Okay. And when they exploded, huge amounts of material came back into the space. Now these gas and dust are released by old star, mixed together and formed new clouds, and those clouds contain all the ingredients needed to build planets. So, about 4.6 billion years ago, one of these clouds began to collapse. Most of the material gathered in the center. So, that center became our sun. So, 99.98% of the mass of our solar system is concentrated in the sun itself. Now, students often ask me something interesting. If the sun formed, why didn't all the materials go into the sun? The answer is that some material remained around it. Okay, so if you can see this first diagram, this was around the cloud dust formation. Sorry, the initial cloud when the star exploded. Okay, second is this sun formation, and third is sun, and then some planetesimals are forming, and then fourth is our solar system forming. Okay. Now this the answer is that some material remained around it. Now this material continued moving around the sun in a large disk, as you can see in the fourth diagram. Okay. Inside this disk were tiny particles of dust and rock. Rock in the sense very small planetesimals. Now these particles kept colliding with one another. Sometimes they broke apart, but mainly they stuck together. So small particles became bigger particles. Now bigger particles became rocks, and rocks became larger bodies, and eventually into planets. So the first time our planet existed, but it did not look like Earth we know today, or the Venus we know today, or the Mars we know today. So no continents were there. There was young Earth, or proto Earth we call it. It was very hot, and then another major event occurred. So the major event was the collision of Theia-like object. It was a comet. It was of Mars size, and it collided with Earth, and then collision happened, and then disk of debris, and then it formed into our moon. Okay. So the impact threw huge amounts of material into space around our planet. So over time, gravity pulled that material together, and that is how our moon was formed. So before Earth's geological history even begins, five important things we have to map. First, the universe formed. Second, we know the stars formed. Okay. And after the stars created the elements needed for planets. So that's how our solar system was formed from many stardust, and then our sun was formed, and then our different planets were formed. Okay, and then the moon formed. Now, there are eventually all the satellites, or all the moons, the natural satellites of every planet formed something similarly, or the other way around. But for Earth, we know that a Theia-like object collided with Earth, and then the moon formed. Now, we'll call the first chapter on the Earth, that is the Hadean Eon. Okay, so Hadean Eon ka time is 4.54 to 4 billion years ago. So at that time, Earth looked like a molten, violent world. Now, we know where the ingredients came from. The Big Bang gave us hydrogen and helium. Then stars formed those gases, and inside stars, new elements were created. When stars died, they released those elements back into space. Now we have all the ingredients needed to build our planet. Now, next question is, about 4.6 billion years ago, there was a giant cloud of gas and dust in our galaxy. Now, this cloud contains hydrogen, helium, oxygen, silicon, iron, magnesium, and similar lighter elements. Okay. So now, in other words, it contained the raw material, okay, which we have talked about. Now, gravity began pulling a part of these cloud together. And why we know that there was some places where there was a huge pull for the gravity, and there was some lighter areas, because we know the clouds were not perfectly uniform. Okay, so some regions contain slightly more matter than others. More matter means a slightly stronger gravitational pull. So now these stronger pull attracted even more matter. So over millions of years, those dense regions became denser and denser, and that's how our cloud collapses inward. Now, as the cloud became smaller, it also began spinning faster. So eventually, it flattened into a giant rotating disk. At the center of that disk, most of the material gathered together. Now, the center became hotter and hotter, eventually hot enough for nuclear fusion to begin. So, when fusion begins, our star is born, and our sun had formed. So, that initial fusion, which created our sun, was because of this. Okay. Now, here's something interesting. As I said, 99.8% mass is contained in the solar system. So, where the gravitational energy is concentrated in the solar system, that is your question for the next lecture. Okay. If you don't get the answer, I'll answer in the next lecture, but try to get answer as much, try to get more knowledge as you can for these prompt up questions. Now, around the sun, a small amount remained in the disk around the young sun. That remaining material would eventually form the planets. So, in the last lecture, I was asked why Earth is rocky, why Jupiter is gaseous, or why the outer planets are gaseous. That is because of the temperature difference. Okay, so there is the initial differentiation which happened in the solar system, and then the next is the initial differentiation which happened in the individual planet, and the temperature control elements. Okay, so young sun was extremely hot, as we know, right? Now, part of the disk close to the sun was also very hot. So the parts farther away, which were much cooler. So these Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, they were farther away from the sun. So the temperature was much cooler than as compared to the region in Earth, Moon, Mars, or Venus or Mercury was formed. Okay. Near the sun, light materials such as hydrogen, helium, and water vapor could not easily remain around small growing planets, so they escaped or stayed as gas. But rock and metal could survive those high temperatures. So, in the inner solar nebula, the main building material were rock and metal, and over time, those materials formed Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And after Mars, we have our gaseous giants. So the inner planets are rocky, and we as we go out of the asteroid belt, water could freeze, ammonia could freeze, methane could freeze because the temperature is very low over there, right? So more solid materials we have. Now these planets became from solid material, but these solid materials means larger planets can form. So the inner rocky planets are smaller in size as compared to those giant gaseous planets. So the outer planets grew much bigger than the inner planets. As they become larger, their gravity also became stronger. So eventually, planets like Jupiter and Saturn became massive enough to capture enormous amounts of hydrogen and helium gas, and that is why they became gas giants. So the inner planets are rocky, not because rocks only exist near the sun, because the temperature was ideal for only solid materials or only for rocky or heavier materials to stick together. And the real reason and the asteroid belt is not collapsing inside the inner planets because of Jupiter's gravitational force, right? So Jupiter becomes massive, Saturn becomes massive, Uranus become massive, and then all these Neptune also become massive. So if you consider all these Jupiter moons or Saturn's moons or Uranus and Neptune's moons, they are all icy moons as compared to the moon of our inner rocky planets. Okay, so because temperature is low and we can have much more time for cooling and condensation, right? Now, why Pluto is not a part of the planet anymore? It is a gaseous planet, but it's a dwarf planet because it has not cleared the objects around from its neighborhood. Right? There are no neighboring objects apart from Moon. We don't have any other objects rotating around Earth. Right? Similarly for Mars, similarly for Mercury, similarly for Venus, similarly for Jupiter. Whatever the dust or whatever the small debris we have, it has been collided into a natural satellite, but Moon could not clear it, and it also doesn't follow its elliptical orbit as other planets do. That's why we removed it from our ninth planet. Okay, now the Hadean period finally. So we had hydrogen is light. We know that temperatures are high. Hydrogen particles move very fast. So near the young sun, it was difficult for small growing planets to hold on to that fast moving gas. So that's why the inner planets are less in these gaseous elements, and that's why it was very difficult to have our own atmosphere in the beginning. It was mostly the molten rock, or you can say molten volcanic magma in these four planets initially. That's why we have more of igneous rock, more of volcanic rocks, because they are all formed from the magma inside there. Okay. So now we know that Hadean period is the first initial period, and during this time there were no continents, there were no trees, there were no people, there were not actually any life on Earth. So Earth was very different from the Earth we know today, and it was more like an alien planet. So first of all, Earth was still growing. Earth was still having more and more dust debris. It was having more and more molten magma. It was having more bombardments from the comets. So large objects were from space were constantly crashing into Earth, into Mars, into Moon, Venus, and Mercury. So every impact released enormous amount of energy. Also, gravity was squeezing Earth inward. So as materials were pulled together, heat was generated inside the planet. And third, elements inside Earth were naturally radioactive. So when these radioactive elements were breaking down, they were releasing initial additional heat. So because of that, temperature was constantly rising for Earth, and similarly for all the four rocky planets we know today. Okay. So as a result, Earth was a very hot young planet. Now what happens to rock when it gets very hot enough? So it melts. So new rock was forming and it was continuously melting as well. So it was a constant chain reaction. New rock was forming, and then some asteroid impact will happen. Then it will result into molten magma, or new shock waves will release, or new volcanic eruptions will erupt. So this was a constant pattern to till the end of the Hadean period. Okay, so large part of the earth was molten only. So you can imagine an earth covered in the vast ocean of molten magma only. So it was like a magma ocean. Now this melting matters because once material melts, they can move around much more easily, right? So that allows them to separate. So let's think about if you mix together different materials of different density. For example, if you're trying to mix water and oil, which one will float um, at the top, the water or the oil? This is a prompt question for your next lecture. If you don't get the answer, I'll answer it now. But if anybody wants to turn up their mic on and wants to answer, which one will float above the other, oil or water? Which one is more denser? Basically, I'm asking, water or oil?
Oil is more denser than water.
Oil is more denser than the water. Okay, so oil will be on the upper end or on the lower end. If we are trying to mix oil and water, which will be floating on the above? Have you tried that experiment?
Oil will settle down and water will float on it.
Are you sure?
No, I
Okay, so try this experiment at home and then in the next lecture answer me. Okay. So what we know is the less dense materials tends to stay higher up. So whatever the denser elements were, they started sinking towards the core, inner core, and then the lighter elements came to the outer core, and then the other lighter elements formed the mantle, and then the crust. So the continental crust are formed of silica. So these silica are the lightest element on earth, and the heavier are nickel and iron. So they form our inner core. So these heavier materials, most of the surrounding rocks started moving towards the center of the planet, and as far more iron moved towards the Earth, Earth's core began to form. Now the next question for all of you is: like Earth, does other planets also have core, mantle, and crust, or like core and mantle or core and crust? So does other planets also have this differentiation or not? If yes, then you have to tell me about Mars and Venus. Okay, and does Moon have its core or not? So that's a prompt question for your next lecture. So if we don't have our core, we won't be having a magnetosphere. We don't have our magnetic energy or magnetic field surrounding Earth, and that's how we won't be having our own atmosphere. So this differentiation was not only happening on its own, but it was also protecting us from the future impacts, or from the future uh, collisions, or from future. Or it was a good environment for our future life to prosper. So we were becoming organized into layers, a core in the center, a mantle above it, and a crust at the surface. So that is the basic structure of the Earth we know today. So when we move towards the Earth, uh, does Earth have the atmosphere I mean, the atmosphere we have today was not the atmosphere we have in the Hadean period or in the Archean eon, in the initial days. So Earth's earliest atmosphere we won't be able to survive in that earliest atmosphere, as the young sun was very much active. Large impacts were very common on the Earth, and the early atmosphere was very lightly lost. So there were gases suspending, and then some impact will happen, and then they will evaporate, or they will just lost into the outer atmosphere, because there was not much to hold towards the Earth. Okay, and volcanoes were like volcanic eruptions were having at a very larger scale as they are happening today. So magma was constantly rising toward the surface. So when magma reaches the surface, gases trapped inside the air are released, and millions of years volcanic gases release huge amount of gases. Okay, so major gases were water vapor, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and sulfur gases. So these gases slowly build a new atmosphere around the earth, and then some impact will happen and they will get destroyed. But then slowly, when these impacts started to slow down, this atmosphere started to settle more into our earth. Still, no life we know today would be able to survive that atmosphere. Now we'll talk about water, because we know earth is called a blue planet, but where does this water came from? So there are various school of thought. Some say it came with the comets, with the asteroid impact, and some say it was already there on earth. But what we know today is the material or the building block for water came from these asteroid impacts, which got mixed with our magma and which got mixed with our atmosphere, and that's how our water was formed. Again, the ocean we know was not similar to the ocean chemistry we have today, but still life could be possible in that earlier ocean as well. So for the water part, volcanoes release large amounts of water vapor, we know. Okay, that the initial material we know came from the asteroid impact, which was happening in the Hadean period. Okay, the Hadean Eon, or you can say the beginning of Earth. Now the other water-rich asteroid striking planet, and we know that the volcanic eruptions, the magma, and these asteroids together form the initial ocean on the Earth. So now Earth was still hot. Okay, water vapor was there, and water was existing as a steam, not as the so ocean. When I say it was magma ocean only. So wherever there were craters or wherever there were buried holes, then there will be some magmatic ocean were forming, but not as the ocean chemistry we know today. So geological they were ocean, but not the oceanography wala ocean. Okay. Surface temperature was very high for stable oceans we know today to exist. But slowly Earth started cooling, and that was the biggest theme in Earth history. Cooling changes everything. So as temperature dropped, water vapor in the atmosphere began changing into liquid water. So first, initially it was steam, and then it became into liquid water, and then it started to form clouds, and then we have our first rains. So the initial rain the Earth received was not for months or for days; it was for years. We can say it was for thousands of years. It rained extensively on Earth. So gradually, water was collected on those low areas of the Earth's surface. So that's how our ocean started forming in the Hadean period itself. So, so beginning of the slide, we know that Earth was a hot molten world, and then by the end of the Hadean, we know that Earth has developed a core, a mantle, a crust, a atmosphere, and a liquid water as well. Okay. So जो modern Earth के foundations हैं that were there by the end of the Hadean period. There were not many uh, continents we know today were there, but we can say that the building blocks for continents, the cratons, has started forming. Okay. So next period was Archean Eon. So Archean starts from 4 to 2.5 billion years ago. It's a very large period as compared to the Hadean Eon. And Hadean Eon lasted from 4.54 to 4 billion years ago, and Archean lasted from 4 to 2.5 billion years ago. And this was the time Earth has its proper core, its crust, atmosphere, ocean. Okay. And it's a 1.5 billion years of Earth's history. So if you want to compare, dinosaurs, which we talk most of the time, thrived only for 165 million years ago. And this period we are going to talk about lasted for 1.5 billion years ago. That is like almost 10 times greater than the period we had then. So Earth had early oceans. The answer is continents which were missing to form the planet, to form the modern Earth we know today. So, as I said, continents were not there, but cratons were there. So, cratons are individual blocks which form the continents. So how many cratons are there on the Indian plate? That is your prompt question. If any of you are from geology background, you can answer it right now. It's also mentioned on the slide. But if anybody wants to answer specifically from geology background, how many cratons, basically how many Archean cratons we have on the Indian plate right now? Anybody? I see Saurav in the audience. Saurav, would you like to answer? Okay, so if not now, in the next lecture, please try to answer how many cratons are there on the Indian plate. Uh, okay, so volcanoes were extremely active during the Archean Eon. So whatever the crust was forming, it was being recycled and changed. As I said, more bombardment was there. The crust was forming, and then some melting will occur, and then it will recycle, and then new crust will form. But still, we have some cratons, the initial building blocks of continents or of individual plates. These cratons in India are Dharwad, Singhbhum, and Bastar. They are in the southern region of India. Okay, the Karnataka area, the Orissa, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh area. So these are the areas which are related to the Archean Eon, which date to 3 billion years ago. Okay, so similarly, we have other cratons on different plates as well, which were forming the initial building blocks for those continents. Okay, so initially, these continents did not form. These cratons were on the surface of the earth in different regions. They were not um, joined together as we know today. So we know that some rocks are heavier, some rocks are lighter. So lighter rocks have a better chance of remaining near the surface. Okay. So over millions of years, melting, volcanic activity, and recycling of crust produced rocks that were rich in silica. As I said, the crust is formed by silica materials as it is the lighter element. Okay. And they were lighter, so they tended to remain near the surface. Gradually, small pieces of these continental crust began to appear, and we know they are called cratons. So, if you want to imagine the initial time for the Earth, it was like thousands of islands scattered across a vast global ocean. So, you can say like there were Lakshadweep, not in literal sense, Lakshadweep was not there, but I'm saying just imagine Lakshadweep, Andaman, Indonesia, Malaysia, like these smaller areas or smaller cratons on the planet Earth. Okay. Now, when these cratons started to form together, or more cratons started to forming, then only we have our small continental fragments, and then major part was oceans only. Continent part was less, and huge part was of ocean, which was very different from what we know today. Okay. So as I said, Dharwad Craton is in Karnataka, and then some rocks were there that were 3 billion years old. So this period lasted till 2.5 billion years, but the cratons we have on India or on Africa or on America are from like 3.5 to 3 billion years old. So they formed at the early stage of this Archean period and survived all these volcanic eruptions and these asteroid impacts. Singhbhum is in Jharkhand and Orissa. Okay, so the southern part and the southeast of India was majorly stable or from the initial stages of India. And in South Africa, we have Kapwal Craton. In Australia, we have Pilbara Craton. And in Canada, we have the Canadian Sheep. So these are the oldest surviving pieces of Earth. So for this time, for the Archean time, we know that the life we know today does not exist, but we still had our single-celled organisms. Okay, single-celled organisms couldn't be seen with the naked eye, so we need microscopes. But they were there, which can survive the high temperature environment. We are not sure if they still exist or not, because there are extreme environments, and if we can find any single cell bacteria in those extreme environment, could be very useful for the astrobiology part. Okay, but as of now, we know they are all extinct. But you never know in the fossil or in the paleontology history. Some survive, and then we have our living fossils as well. But as of today, we know that some single cell bacteria exist in the extreme environment, but most of that from Archean has been extincted. Okay. Now, these single cell bacteria were in the ocean. Okay, the ocean chemistry was different from today, but the ocean provided a stable chemical condition. It was not bombarded by the asteroid impact continuously, not new crust was forming every now and then in the ocean. So ocean water or the ocean chemistry provided a stable environment for these early life to form. Okay, and it also protected from the solar radiation. So very for a very long time, the life on earth was in the oceans itself. Okay, so these are some of the cratons. Uh, we have some on the African shield, some on the South American shield, some on the European shield. Now, next is our Proterozoic eon, which starts from 2.5 billion to 541 million years ago. It had various good events which marked the a very good amount of time or very important geological events. First was cyanobacteria bloom, then we have great oxidation event, then we have banded iron formations, then we have our snowball earth, the Ediacaran time. Okay, so the oxygen we have today has the precursors in the Proterozoic eon. The Archean ended at 2.5 billion years ago, and after that, the Proterozoic started. So, Earth already had oceans, and Earth had continents, and life was existing as single cell bacteria. And some of these microorganisms, some of these single cell bacteria, have started evolving into photosynthetic bacteria. Okay, by the end of Archean. Now, this creates a very interesting question. If photosynthesis was already happening, why wasn't the atmosphere was full of oxygen? Because if you remember your biology chapters on photosynthesis, photosynthesis produces oxygen. Okay, so where was all that oxygen going if there were some bacteria who were producing who were processing photosynthesis, who were using the sunlight and creating oxygen? So where was all that oxygen going? So during the Archean, how the oceans look like, they were different from today's ocean. So today's seawater contains dissolved oxygen. Okay, fish depends on it, marine organisms depend on it, but Archean oceans contain very little oxygen. They contain large amounts of dissolved iron. That's how our banded iron formation have occurred. And dissolved iron was in very huge amount in the Archean time and in the early Proterozoic time as well. And the oxygen which was being released into these oceans by these microorganisms was being captured by the iron. Okay, when oxygen reacts with iron, the oxygen gets used up and creates iron oxide minerals. So, in simple, we can say oxygen was being removed almost as soon as it was being produced because the content of iron in the ocean was very high. So, it never had a chance to build up in the atmosphere. For millions of years, this process continued. Tiny microorganisms kept producing oxygen, the oceans kept removing it, and oxygen was trying to accumulate. The oceans kept saying, not yet, because there was huge amount of bacteria, but there was much more amount of iron which was utilizing the oxygen with whatever was produced. So all this oxygen binding with iron formed iron oxide, and it got settled on the seafloor. So layer after layer, year after year, and then millions of years, eventually these layers became rock. So whatever banded iron formations we see today are because of those oxygen uh, reacting with the iron. And these rocks have some of the most evidence for the oxygen revolution which happened in the Proterozoic or in the Archean time. So India's major iron ore deposits are linked to that story itself. So when we say we are studying iron-rich rocks in the Dharwar Craton or the Singhbhum Crater or the Bastar Craton, we are looking at the process which are the evidence of that 2 billion years ago of history. Okay. So around 2.5 billion years ago, Earth changed forever, and you think it was a great use for life, but it wasn't, because, as you know, oxygen was so much there. So more uh, plants could flourish. We don't have plants right now, but more life could flourish. But it wasn't like that, because for those organisms, oxygen was actually toxic, because they were not evolved in the environment where oxygen was there. They were the precursors of oxygen. They were producing oxygen for them oxygen was actually very toxic, and they were making earth into a world where oxygen was thriving. So the chemistry for them changed entirely, the atmosphere changed for them. So some organisms, or we can say most of the organisms at that time, disappeared because of that great oxidation event, and some survived where oxygen remained very low, and others adapted to this condition, and they changed their forms, they changed their processes, and life evolved into a more oxygen friendly environment. So oxygen allows organisms to extract much more energy from food. So much more energy means larger cells, which means more complex bodies, which means much more complicated ecosystem. So without sufficient oxygen, complex life was not possible. But after this great oxidation event, or during this great oxidation event, complex life evolved. So these single celled bacteria formed into multicellular or multicellular bacteria. So oxygen was not changing the atmosphere; it was also changing the life. It was making a unicellular into multicellular or a complex life form and thick celled organisms. So what was happening to the climate? So, as we know, Earth's climate slowly became more comfortable through the time. Like for us, it's much more comfortable, as like for humans couldn't even survive like 1,000 million years ago as well. So, Proterozoic contains some of the most extreme climate events in Earth's history. So, there is evidence that Earth may have experienced periods when ice spread across much of the planet. So, these events are known as snowball Earth episodes. So imagine this. Today we worry about glaciers in the Himalaya, that glaciers reaching tropical regions, or imagine oceans covered by vast amounts of ice. So imagine looking at Earth from space and seeing the whiter planet. Okay, not the bluish planet, but a white planet. So that was snowball Earth. So students often ask, how could Earth become so cold that it became a snowball? So some scientists call it a snowball Earth, or some scientists call it a slush ball Earth. Okay, so scientists think changes in greenhouse gases, weathering of rocks, plate tectonics, and carbon cycle all play an important role in the slush ball or snowball Earth. Earth's climate was very much capable of dramatic changes, and it's still the atmosphere. This strengthened the greenhouse effect. Now temperature rise, ice melted, and then Earth returned to a warmer condition. Now, by the end of Proterozoic, something extraordinary happened. For most of Earth's history, life had been microscopic, but now larger and more complex organisms began appearing. These were not dinosaurs, fish, or animals; they were soft-bodied organisms, um, and they represent an important milestone, because from Archean to Proterozoic, we have from simple cell to, or single cell to multicellular, or to complex life form. We have now reached the Paleozoic era. So Paleozoic means ancient life. Okay, it lasted from 451 million years to 252 million years ago. So at the end of Proterozoic, Earth had continents, Earth had oceans, Earth had oxygen, and life was already existing. So what changes happened during the Paleozoic era? Life left the oceans and transformed to the continents. So we say the first life happened in the oceans, and then from oceans the life moved to the land. This thing happened in the Paleozoic era. So for almost 4 billion years, life had been mostly in the ocean. For the first time, it could become a land story, but the life which came from ocean towards the land. It was not the not the animals, but the plants. Okay, so there were plants which traveled from ocean to land first, and then they created an environment for the organisms or for these animals to survive. And then we have our first arthropoda group, which travel from ocean to the land area. Okay, so I'll debrief this now. So most of the time when they were coming from ocean to the land area, most of them died because they don't have the uh, skin to survive a land a drier environment. Okay, and the eggs they used to have in the ocean were has to be different from the eggs they can lay on the land, because the environment was very much drier. It was not like a very humid or very moist environment like the oceans. But still there were some animals which survived by evolving, and those traits were passed down to their next generations. So, over millions of years, these small advantages accumulated, and gradually, some organisms became capable of living outside water for longer periods. So, now we know that your body is supported by the surrounding water, right? So, on land, gravity becomes a huge challenge. Plants need stronger tissues, so they need water to transport water from the ground to their supporting upper parts. So they need protection against drying out. So that's how roots were evolved. Roots were evolved on the land part, and then eventually stems evolved. So internal transport system evolved, and first true land plants appeared. Okay, so once land plants survived, everything changed because that was the food for the land. That was food on land for the animals, as I told earlier. So plants create the foundation for this ecosystem, and then animals followed. Now first animals were arthropoda, which are the ancestors of insects, spiders, and millipedes. Later came the vertebrates, so which are the ancestors of fish living in the ocean currently. Also, next question for you: which of the fish is related to Homo sapiens, like genetically, like species wise? We are close to which fishes? That's the question for your next lecture. If anybody is from biology background or geology background and wants to answer right now, they can turn up their mic on and answer it.
Whales.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so whales is the correct answer. But just check more which kind of whales we are. I mean, not we are, but which kind of whales are related to us, or which sharks are related to us, or dolphins, or anything. Okay. So over time, certain groups evolved stronger fins and stronger skeletons. So these adaptations help them move in the shallow water and eventually onto land. So initially, the ocean life came to the coastal region, to the swampy areas, and then to the more drier areas like the inner part of those stratons or the continents. Okay. So earlier pioneers gave rise to amphibians, and but they still need water for production, so they could, you know, otherwise their eggs will dry out easily. So next renovation was on their eggs. So the first amniotic egg was on the land, and it occurred in the Paleozoic age. Do you know what is an amniotic egg? So amniotic egg is a egg which has its own protective layer, which keeps the fetus very in a moist environment. Can you think of any organism which has amniotic egg?
Tadpole. I mean frog.
And okay, so you have seen their eggs, I mean, in the Discovery Channel or somewhere. So that's why you know what amniotic eggs are. Okay, the picture is clear. They have their own protective shell. That's but does all the land animals, including humans, have amniotic eggs or not? That is a prompt question for your next lecture. So next lecture is going to be start with all these questions I have asked. Once we answer all these questions and solve all your doubts, then only we will move to the moon part. Okay. Now Next organisms which came to the land were reptiles, and they spread onto the drier environments, and that's how our life evolved in the Paleozoic era. Okay, and then mosses and vascular plant colonized the terrestrial environments as well, and then all the land masses collide into a single supercontinent surrounded by Panthalsa Ocean. Okay, so this was like the surface of Earth during the Paleozoic. That's our initial Panthalsa, the ocean, and then that's our continent part, which was much more like uh, a single continent, but still we have like some shallower parts in the lighter blue region. We have Gondwana, we have Euromerica, we have Angara, we have Cathasia, sorry, and then we have our Tethys Ocean. So it's 6:04 right now. I am ending my presentation here itself, and I'll pick up on from this lecture onwards, from this slide onwards to the next lecture. So whatever questions I've asked, that's your homework, because it's a 4-part series, so you will be tested on these questions. So just try to answer those questions as try to gather knowledge as much as you can on those answers, and we'll deal with these questions in the next lecture. So as of now, if I want to summarize what actually happened in the Hadean period, what we have. So in the Hadean period, Earth accreted. Okay, it was around 4.54 billion years ago. Then we have our giant impact with Theia and our moon formed, and then global magma ocean formed. Magma ocean. Okay, so it was just magma in the lower region, lower surface, lower region, or the craters of the Earth. And then core, mantle, and crust started to form, and differentiation happened, and denser elements started to sink towards the inner part of the earth. So iron and nickel formed the core of the earth, and then we have our light, medium to lighter elements towards the mantle, and then we have our crust. And then the next step was crust solidified. So first atmosphere of CO2, N2, and water vapor formed, and then we have our late heavy bombardment, which delivered our first water, and ocean formed around 4 billion years ago. And then we have our Archean eon, which was from 4 to 2.5 billion years ago. Continents formed and first life appeared. First life was prokaryote, which emerged in shallow seas, and then we have our stromatolites. Then these single cell bacteria or cyanobacteria started photosynthesis and produced free oxygen, which later helped the stage for great oxidation event in the later stages. And then we have our early ocean and atmosphere. So oceans was rich in iron, and atmosphere still largely was of CO2, N2, methane, and no free O2 was there, but majorly CO2, N2, and methane. These are the cratons which formed during the Archean time. So in India, we know Dharwad, which is around the Karnataka region. Then we have our Singhbhum, and then we have our Bastar region. So south area, southern part of India, and then the eastern part of India. And then we have covered our Proterozoic area. In Proterozoic, not area, Proterozoic eon, sorry. It was from 2.5 billion to 541 million years ago. And cyanobacteria bloomed, so more oxygen was there. And then great oxidation event happened, and then banded iron formation happened. How? Because the oxygen which was being produced in the atmosphere started to bind with the iron present in the ocean, and iron oxides were formed. And over the period of hundred and thousands and million years, these layers solidified into rocks and formed banded iron formation. So whatever banded iron formation we know or we see today is part of that Proterozoic eon. And then snowball Earth happened, and snowball is also sometimes known as slush ball Earth. With lower latitudes had open water, and upper regions had like solid uh, solid snowball. But volcanic eruptions were still happening, so ice started to melt. And then we have our next is Paleozoic era. So it was from 541 to 252 million years million years, and then the explosion of complex life form. So during this time, the life from ocean transformed to land. First, plants appeared, towards the coastal region and towards the shallow area, shallow swampy area, and then followed by the animals, the organisms. First were the arthropoda groups. Okay, then we have our reptiles, which followed them, and then the mass extinctions I'll talk about in next lecture series or at the end of the this webinar, because that is another whole topic, but we'll touch base on those things. But major mass extinction happened. Because of that, the life we had on earth initially is no more on earth. Okay, and then we have our plants on land, and then the Pangea formed, which is like this, and then the major ocean was Panthalsa. Okay, so I'm ending my lecture series here. I mean, this lecture here. Okay, thank you, Padavat Balakrishna. And okay, so not many questions you guys have asked. So whatever questions I have given you, please try to solve as much as you can. Like I'll be how many participants you are there. So for example, I'll ask Khushi like answer this question, or I'll ask Saurav answer this question, or I'll ask Tanisha to answer this question. So similarly, I'll ask question. It is going to be a very interactive session for the first 30 minutes in the next lecture, and then we'll touch base on the moon part and the remaining of the earth part. Okay. Thank you so much for being a very lovely audience. Thank you, Quantum Veda, for organizing this webinar. Thank you so much, audience, for a lovely patience and concentration. I hope I am able to deliver as much as I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bharti Sharma, for such an insightful and engaging session. Ma'am, we truly appreciate you for sharing your knowledge and helping us understand the fascinating evolution of our Earth. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning with the Quantum Veda. Thank you so much.